Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Hey Yall Hey morning show. Alicia has the morning off, but I am Casey.
And I'm Monica. Hello, good morning. So this morning we also are joined by Carmen from Jesus Loving Homesteader. You were a guest yesterday on our podcast episode, and we are super excited to welcome you in here today to join us, kind of filling in for Alicia while she's gone today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, we had a good time. So on our podcast episode, we talked about smaller space gardening. If that's, I don't really want to make it too say that it's just about that, but I think we really discussed just smaller spaces, gardening in when you don't have 100 acres that you can garden and you can run a homestead on any space, right?
Right. That's exactly it.
Excuse me, I had a cough. I think, sorry, this is real life here.
I was about to say, talk about unscripted.
I was like, am I supposed to be saying something?
I'm like, sorry, I had to turn the mic off really quick so I could cough. No, I think it was a really good episode too. It was just really, we had a lot of conversation, and I'm trying to remember some of the stuff we talked about, but I think it's super interesting because a lot of people are always saying that you can homestead. Oh, I can't do that. I don't have a lot of space, but I really feel like you can homestead no matter where you are. You can grow a garden. You can grow your own food, whether it's animals or fruits and vegetables. You can do it anywhere you are if you just want to enough.
And that, you hit it right there. You have to want to do it. You have to have that motivation. And if you don't have that motivation and it's just like a little thought, I encourage you to join some local gardening groups, or go on YouTube, look at gardens in your area. And I promise you that will encourage you.
Right. And Carmen, how big is your homestead? I know we talked about it on the podcast, but you don't homestead on 400 acres.
No, not at all. It's a little under half an acre.
See, it's always blows my mind every time I talk to Carmen, because one, you have to go follow her on YouTube to really get the amazingness, which is Carmen from Jesus Loving Homesteader, because you do so much on your homestead that even people that have the 10 and the 20 and the 30 acre homesteads don't do. I don't want to say smartly. What's the word I'm looking for? Hello, unscripted. But they don't map out their homestead to make it pretty much work for them. And I think you do that so beautifully, which is shown on your YouTube channel and which is shown every time you come on our podcast too.
I also like to be somewhat organized, and I want things to be kind of
there we go. Thank you, Carmen. Organized. That's the word I was looking for. I could not find it.
So if I go outside, I want a designated area for everything. And I think the garden ended up on one completely different side of the yard in this perfect little area because of our dog. I was like, okay, how do I create a garden area that is safe from our dog? Because I wasn't exactly sure how she would react to something new. So we kind of just made the fence and made that the garden area, and it worked amazing for us.
Yeah, see, I'm not that organized. I just start throwing things around. I'm like, hey, this looks like it's going to be great here. Eric's always like, hey, Monica,
the pretty princess.
Yeah, I just go sprinkling seeds around. He's like, hey, you have 3 dozen tomatoes, and where are you going to put that? I'm like, right here on this 16-foot cattle panel. And he's like, I think this should be spaced out further. And I'm like, no, not really. And he's always like, yeah, probably. So then I end up getting myself in the trouble later. So I pay the price for not paying attention as much and being as organized. But, it really is. There's a lot to be said for really planning it out. And your spaces are absolutely beautiful. I've seen them firsthand. Absolutely gorgeous. But it's funny because when you said how big your garden was, your garden space, I went back to Eric and I'm like, how big is our garden space? And it was smaller than what you have. And I'm like, why is our garden so small? And Carmen's is so big. And he was like, really, Monica? We're doing this.
Wait, Monica, how big is your garden space?
It's smaller. Wait, how big is your garden? How big of an area do you garden in, Carmen?
Okay, so what's so funny is Nathan recounted the area, a very small estimate. Mm-hmm. And it's probably a little bit under 2,000 square foot.
Yeah, I don't garden in that much space. I don't know, but he said, no, that's not our life. It's fine, be that way.
Oh,
But
come
you
on,
also have to
Eric.
keep in mind that you guys also have bigger animals that you tend to.
Yeah.
Right.
So, some people, it's so easy for all of us to get caught up in the comparison situation. But
I
at the
do.
end of the day, we're all so different as people in general, and we have different spaces, we have different animals. Like if I
Yeah.
had cows and pigs having babies all the time, like I don't know how much attention I would give my garden, to be quite
Right.
frank.
Well, I think that's what he said to me too. He was like, Monica. And I'm like, Carmen's got like 2,000 square feet. She's got like I think at the time you said 1,800 square feet or something like that. And I was like, she's got like a massive garden. Well, first of all, I was like, how big is that? And he's like, you've seen it. And I'm like, I know, but it's like really like it's a lot, right? And he was like, I mean, yeah, that's a big space. And I'm like, well, how big is ours? And he's like, told us. And I'm like, oh, that's not very big. I was like, how come my garden's smaller than hers? And he's like, Monica, if you had a bigger garden, do you think you could keep up with it? And I was like, no. He was like, okay, then. So why are you all upset? And I'm like, okay, I'm not upset, actually. He was laughing at me. So we were just kind of sitting there and I'm like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Because what we try to do is do what's manageable. Like Carmen said, you do what's manageable for you. And there are so many times that I can't even keep up with what I've got out there. And it's definitely a smaller garden space. But I also have one long garden space. And you have like spaces that are kind of evened out. And I love the way you have your laid out. And it's so pretty. Mine is not like a pretty garden space. It's just like rows and a big rectangle square.
Well, also with the bigger your garden is, like most of the time, the more weeding you have to do, the more work, the more watering. So that's one thing for you, Monica. I can see where Eric was coming from.
No, Carmen has like zero issues with that stuff. She just has stuff die and burn up. She don't have any weeds. It's all weed free. It's beautiful.
Yes, but that's because we
See?
have that time to like that extra time to spend a lot of time hauling mulch. Like, and I also harass local arborists. Like I literally drive, and if I see anybody doing wood chips, I pull my car over and I'm like, hey, where are you going with them wood chips? And then they're just like, well, we're going to take them back or going to the dump. And I was like, my house is 608-5555.
That's funny.
Can you go over there and drop it off?
Girl,
And then
they're tearing all kinds of trees down up the street here up on 1565
Yeah.
if you need more. So
Take full advantage. If you see people chipping and you need mulch, like just send them your address and tell them, hey, go drop it off, please. Because they have to pay to drop that stuff off at the dump, and it's free if they drop it off at your house.
really?
Well, that's so funny, like hearing that from Carmen, because we had Casey from Boots and Bounty on a couple weeks ago, and she said the same thing. She said,
that's
yeah, I
true.
like to harass the men that are, turning the trees into chips and have them deliver it. I had never thought about that until I've heard it from these two ladies. And now I'm like, okay, now I'm on a hunt. Every time I'm like either driving into town or driving to church, I'm not watching the road. I'm watching the side of the road to see
Good to know.
who's tearing down trees, important. It's important stuff.
Good to know all the people on the Georgia roads. Be mindful.
The three of us driving in the
Casey is
town where
not
I am.
watching where he's going. He's admitted it right here on the podcast morning show.
I have, yes,
Yeah.
I have. But no, I mean that's so smart. I mean that's a way to budget your homestead for the free, and the free is nice. We all like the free.
Yeah.
Well, and you get to see the trees that they're just freshly chipped. I mean, to be honest, a lot of the mulch sold at the stores, it's bagged up in these tiny little bags, and a lot of it is dyed.
Yeah.
You just don't know. I'm just really, really, really picky when it comes to certain things. I want it fresh, I want it raw, and I want to see what's going on with it. That's part of the whole reason we garden in a homestead to begin with. I want to know what's in there. So if you're buying all this dyed mulch that's on discount, and you're throwing it on your beautiful hugelkultur or like organic garden, it's just like, what am I doing?
Right.
Yeah, you make a good point. That's a really good point. I really, every time I drive past these people up the road, because they have been cutting down trees and basically chipping it for, I want to say at least 4 weeks now, and they're still not finished. Every time I drive past them, I drive past them several times a week, and I want to stop so bad, but I don't, but I really am like, I should just pull over. I need to channel the inner Carmen today when I drive out that way and be like, hey, I need you guys to bring the stuff to my house. I'm right down the road.
Well, Monica, don't sound just like that. That was a little gruff.
It's my morning voice. I need to get my like really pretty like lady voice on later.
I was about to say, you'll have the guys be like, yes, ma'am. Okay. Right away.
I'll have to be like, hi.
Well, talking about hugelkultur and gardens, this kind of brings us to our first comment call out that we want to do.
Ooh.
So here's the first.
It's time for
Subscriber comment call out. Pew pew pew. Hot mess. Just
I love
every
it so
time I
much.
hear it. So this one is from Megan Bruner. And Megan said, okay, homesteaders, we've got our 2 boxes built and laid them with cardboard, sticks, hay, logs as filler. FYI, that's hugelkultur. I actually learned that from Carmen. Just saying. We'll talk about it. Dirt and topsoil is next. We are zone 7B. I know nothing. So what should I plant in each box? What grows good together? And how many things super box? I think that was supposed to be per box, but I don't know. I was zone 7B before I moved out here and joined Carmen and Monica on the 8A train. But hugelkultur 1 is wonderful. In our raised beds, we have hugelkultur. It is really good at keeping weeds down. You don't really get any weeds most of the time. Carmen, did you want to jump on this comment first and answer some of the questions?
I did want to go ahead and go talk about this a little bit, but in the beginning, I wanted to add something she didn't add. So she went ahead and she layered it and stuff with the cardboard, 6 haze logs as filler. But if you're looking at this comment and you've never done this before, I also want to add that you also need to put compost on the top.
Yeah.
Because those things do break down, and but you need compost now for your plants that you're putting in there right now, because this process is actually extremely great because it's a slower process for breaking down. So it'll feed it all through the season. But for right now, you definitely need to put compost in this. So that's just an important little tidbit I wanted to add. But as far as plants, as long as you have that compost in there, you can put whatever that is for the season. Like right now in our season, I would do like lettuces, spinaches, beets, radishes, Swiss chard, things like that, that we're going to go into the colder season for.
Right. And I think that's one thing to remember is that 7B isn't terribly too far from 8A. Again, we're about 2 hours from where we used to live, and we were 7B there, 8A where we are now. So right now, this is, you just finished this box, listen to Carmen and go ahead and start some of those quote unquote winter plants, fall plants. Lettuce, I have not been able to do, Carmen, ever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it was. Both me and Monica tried the zhuzhing, I think is how you put it, Monica.
Yeah, you just
Before.
you sprinkle it and then you kind of like zhuzh the dirt over top of it. I can do it if it's direct sow into my ground. Like that's what I'm going to do this year. I haven't done it yet. I probably should. I'm looking at my calendar. I have to look at my calendar, but I started it in like little seedlings and I like tried it and it did great. And then everything died this past weekend when I got a little bit of rain. Everything went just gone. But I can't ever transplant. I'm not good at growing somewhere and transplanting lettuce. They do not like the transplant for me.
This is what I learned about judging. I didn't even know it was like a proper word for it, but
I don't know if it's a proper word. I think it's
I don't even know either. I just
word.
judge stuff. I just like zhuzh.
I actually judge. That's my life. That's my garden life, judging. So when I throw the lettuce seeds or any small seed for that matter, I water it extremely well. And for the next 3 or 4 days, because the key is to make sure it is germinating. Because those tiny seeds will not germinate unless there is water and it is damp. So I think that might be your issue. I think you're judging or throwing the seeds down, putting the dirt around, but you water it once and then you kind of wait a little bit and then you water it again the next day, but it needs to be consistently watered and damp for those tiny seeds to germinate. And once they're germinating, then you can water normal and regularly, less often.
Yeah, see, I think that's been my problem always too. And see, then when I put it directly in the ground, I feel like the water is too heavy on them. So then I'm walking around trying to individually mist my plants. It's ridiculous because I'm always so over worried that I'm going to heavily water them and they're going to just float away. So because I've only just basically sprinkled them and zhuzhed the dirt. So then they just kind of move around. So that's where I'm having to like find the happy medium of throwing, covering, and then watering. So yeah, they do great when I have them in my little mini, like, individual plant section area and have a little greenhouse topper, and I do all that.
Right.
They do wonderful. But once they
Also,
come
if
up,
your seeds go crazy and start like going all over the garden and not in your row the way you want it to,
mhm.
you can literally just pull them up very gently, like, and just move them where you want them. It is so much easier to move them when when they have actual leaves. I mean, so it's not a huge deal, as long as you're careful enough, and you can just maneuver them wherever you want them.
Okay, good to know. I'll have to try that too.
And can we also just point out how beautiful of a carpentry job this bed is? I was just looking at it.
Yeah.
It is
Facts.
so,
I thought the same
it
thing.
is beautiful, like really, really beautiful. And I wanted to point out this comment that was left. I do this also, that is the companion planting. And click on there and you can put in your zip code. Since I'm a newbie gardener-ish, I always like to learn what are the good companion planting, because I don't know. If I want it and I want to eat it and I want to can it, I plant it. So I
Well,
guess knowing where to plant together is important.
I'm usually the one that's standing there in my garden, like at the last minute, and Eric's standing there with a bunch of plants ready to go in, and he's going, "Okay, what goes next to this one?" And I'm like, "Hold on, let me double check and I'm scrolling on my phone, looking back at all the different companion planting guides that I've downloaded into my calendar or my phone or whatever. And I'm like, okay, this one right here, this is where basil goes, and so yeah.
Right.
What's so funny is like Monica was talking about how my order is in the garden, because everything does looks fairly nice when we're gardening, but at the end of the day, it's like sometimes I'll just get more plants or I'll get an idea and I'm sticking things in random places. I'm just like, okay, I was like, well, you look a little hot. Maybe I should put something taller by you. Or I'm like, oh, well, you're kind of crowded. Let me pull you out and put you somewhere else. I feel like at the end of the day, we're all somewhat newbies to something, because
Mhm.
like I've went to a master gardener's class like to meet some people, and these people have been gardening for 50 years, but they've never heard of a lot of the things that we do now. They've never heard of like the newer plants or the tromboncino squash. So even though they're considered a master gardener, they're still a newbie to something. So I feel like at the end of the
Right.
day, we're all still growing and we're all still learning.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's important for homesteading in general. Like if you're not learning, very controversial to say, but are you really still homesteading? Always learn every day. It's important. Learn about everything. And that brings to another comment call out talking about quote unquote newbies. And I'm trying to find our wonderful, there we go.
It's time for
Subscriber comment call out. Pew, pew, pew. And it's Jeffrey Pham.
Oh, we got, can anyone help me with what might be going on with these eggs? Are my hens pecking at them or the shells just weak? Okay, so to be honest with you, it's looking like you got some hen issues, but it also looks like your eggshells might be weak. It's kind of, I think
A
it looks
little
both.
bit of both.
Looks like a little bit of both to me. I don't know even what the comments said. I didn't even read the comments on this one. I think I did like it. I saw the post, give it a little thumbs up so that it would get a little traction there. But it looks like they're being pecked at, just in my estimation. But you don't know how thick the shells are unless you're actually picking them up and looking at them. But yeah, there's a lot of different opinions on how to keep your chickens from eating their eggs. We've only had a few chickens that were trying to do that. We do the golf ball method, like Renee says right here in the comment that she suggested. Put a golf ball in there. There you go. White golf ball in each box. They peck at the golf ball once or twice. They won't do it again. They really don't. The golf balls are a lot cheaper than those fake eggs you can get at the stores. And that's kind of what I would do. I mean, that's what I have done. And I always have golf balls on hand just in case I need to encourage my hens to continue to lay in a certain area. Or if I have issues with pecking, I just put the golf balls in the area where I want them to lay or what they were doing, and they won't mess with it. But
These
I've
type
only
of
had
issues are hard because it's
it
like it
is.
could be a number of things, and it's like it could be their health, maybe they're
Yeah.
lacking something. It could
Right.
be, I don't know, they could be stressed, they could be annoyed, they could be chickens. Like, I mean, it could be a number of things. So it's like This is one of the things you write all the advice down and you pretty much put a check next to things you've already tried.
Pretty much. And
Yep.
from one of the eggs, it looks relatively small. So are your chickens newer at laying eggs? So would that
Mhm.
have a difference? Or I don't know. See, my
That
chickens
could
haven't started
totally make a
laying yet.
difference.
Yeah,
I'm
I
it
trying to
think
does.
look.
so.
Let me see. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes a difference on the size of the chickens, the breed of the chickens, because their breed will really help determine their temperament. Because some chickens are a little moodier than others.
I was going to say, okay, so this is like soapbox for a minute. So we have kind of a plethora of chickens. We call them the farm blend. But we have two bantams, which are smaller and they're girls. And one, we call her Coco because she's a beautiful chocolate brown. She is moody and likes to peck at anything until if you pour food, like if you're pouring food into the food bowl, then she stops pecking. But until then, I'm like, homie, I'm not going to be pouring every time I come out here. So the pecking
Yeah.
needs to chill out. So I would think that she'd be one of those that I have to put a golf ball in for.
I mean, yeah, maybe if she starts pecking on her eggs. But like Carmen said, it could just be their health as well. They could be needing some more calcium, things like that. There's lots of ways to give your animals calcium. And making sure that they're eating the things and doing the things that they need. I know we talk about Kelzyme on every single episode, but I'm going to tell you, Kelzyme is not, they don't endorse the use for this, but I do know that you can use Kelzyme, which is a calcium supplement for your gardening and stuff, but you can use Kelzyme to throw out there for your animals and they can dust bathe in it and it helps them get the calcium that they need too. So now would be a good time to maybe throw it to Kelzyme. With gardening season in full bloom, Kelzyme certified organic products are just what your garden needs.
From fertilizing your orchards to feeding your soil, Kelzyme's calcium-based fertilizer gives your plants the essential minerals they need to thrive.
Applying Kelzyme to agricultural soils and waters has been proven to increase plant and crop yields while making vegetables and grains healthier and more nutritious.
In addition, Kelzyme can help restore the nutrient balance in animals when they're fed plants grown using Kelzyme in both soil and water.
To check out all of Kelzyme's organic products, visit kelzyme.com and use our promo code HeyBale for 10% off of your purchase.
No, for real though, I didn't just throw that for a commercial. I actually meant it though.
No, it's like for real, for real. Like I know people are probably thinking every time we go on, it's like, oh, Casey, Alicia, and Monica are going to talk about that Kelzyme.
But I will say it really is useful for a lot of things. And
Yeah.
when I was talking to Stina and I was looking at the uses for the Kelzyme, when I realized that you could put the Kelzyme down and the your chickens could dust bathe in it, it really was cool to know that that was an option and to have it and to know that that helps. That also you throw it out there and when they're eating their food, it's going to be on their pellets or whatever they're eating, and they can eat that Kelzyme, and it's not going to hurt them. It's actually going to encourage the continued processing of the calcium in their system. So,
Right.
good thing.
And another good thing about the Kelzyme is, Monica can be, again, the pretty princess and just toss it everywhere. I mean, when Stina was basically we had a meeting with Kelzyme before we even became influencers for them, and she kind of explained how to do it, and she was saying that she even lets her kids just literally throw it onto the plants and let it just chill, and it doesn't do the burning of the leaves, so you can throw it on during the day. It truly is a wonderful product, and again, we wouldn't push anything that we haven't already tried and that we don't trust, and Kelzyme definitely gets the stamp of approval from all of us. So
Yeah, for sure. It's been a good tool in our garden bags.
it has, and I know I've used it in the orchard. I know that Eric has used it in the orchard too, right, Monica?
Yes, it's been wonderful for our trees this year. I will say it's been a huge help. We actually had a massive for compared to not really having anything at all, but we had a really nice size peach crop this year. We were very excited, as well as plums. I was able to make, oh my gosh, I think a dozen jars of plum jelly. And that's the first time I've been able to do anything. And I was so excited because these are we bought these trees and put them in the ground. We bought them from Home Depot, but we got them like 4 years ago, and we have never been able to have a harvest like we have now. And they were already pretty good size when we got them from Home Depot, so they're already a few years old. They weren't just like a little tiny twig. But yeah, no, we had a little crop last year, but our crop last year was maybe like 6 little plums. And this year I had enough for like a dozen.
That's
See,
so
we didn't
exciting.
we didn't get any. Like we moved, this will be coming up on the 3rd garden year, and we had no plums first garden year. And I was like, let me just go ahead and just do the Kelzyme on it and give it a good old hee-ho on trying. And this year, I think we did maybe 13 5-gallon buckets
Mhm.
off of 2 trees.
That's amazing.
Just 2 trees.
Well, and that's the thing too. It's not that we just endorse it but like Eric even said, he's like, hey, I'm going to need you to buy some of that. So we've also purchased, I've like actually purchased it because it's worth it to me. And I don't want to spend my money on stuff that's not worth it. And, you know, we spent our money on that and bought some because we knew that it was worth buying it as well. So yeah, it's definitely, and I use the promo code. Yes. Hey, Bale, it's working. It works. It's good. But yeah, that's one of those things that I did because it was worth it for me. So yeah, it was awesome.
That's also a huge deal because you have like a plethora of manure like on your property. And the fact that you feel like you really want to buy Kelzyme, that just says a lot about the product.
Yeah. And that's the thing too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Was using though, and here's the thing. Okay, Carmen. So we have rabbits. So he constantly puts the rabbit manure around the trees at the tree base every year. So we're trying to encourage the trees to have, we're fertilizing around it each year. He does it certain times of the year. He doesn't do it like every day, but at certain times of year he fertilizes around it. It wasn't doing what it should have done. And when we learned that Kelzyme itself actually helps the uptake, as the way she described it. I'm probably saying it I'm not even doing it justice, but Kelzyme actually helps the uptake of the nutrients and minerals from the ground, from the fertilizer, because Kelzyme isn't a fertilizer necessarily in that sense. It's a fertilizer, but it's not like a compost fertilizer. Does that make sense? Like it doesn't have all those extra things, but this fertilizer helps uptake of all the nutrients and minerals that are in the ground already that are being used. It actually helps the plant get it where it needs to be more efficient.
That's awesome.
Which is cool because you didn't think about that before. You don't think about, oh, well, I'm just putting the fertilizer here, everything should work. But it doesn't always. Sometimes it doesn't work the way it's supposed to. And Kelzyme helps that uptake. So it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat when you learn about that part of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. Now it makes more sense why it works better than what we were just using. So I feel like using that in conjunction with the compost we're using made it so much better. Like it increased it. So yeah.
Right. And also it helps so much with blossom end rot.
Mm-hmm.
I've used it now 2 garden seasons for my tomatoes, and I have never had such beautiful tomatoes as I do now. And I don't do nothing fancy. Like I just said, I usually throw it on there because you're in a rush, like you're throwing chicken feed, throw it on the plants, let it sit. I may water it that day with it on. I may just let it rain on it. But it's such an easy product to use.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We don't do anything fancy here either. And I'm always getting blossom end rot on my Roma tomatoes that I tried growing. I've been trying Roma tomatoes for 3 years. Never have done well. This year was the very first year I actually had an entire crop of Roma tomatoes that would look gorgeous. I will say last year, was it last year or this year, Carmen, you were getting those gorgeous, big, giant paste tomatoes. Was that this spring?
Actually, it's been the last 2 years, thankfully.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been beautiful, beautiful, big, giant paste tomatoes Carmen's had, and she's posting pictures, and I'm like, I'm so jealous right now. She has these
What's the variety, Carmen, that you do?
I did burpee super sauce.
Mm-hmm.
That has become my favorite variety. And then beef steak works really good for me too, for some odd reason.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Those super sauce tomatoes, like Carmen's not like a big lady, okay? She's a little lady, but she's got like little cute little hands. But I'm gonna tell you right now, she's holding these tomatoes in her hands. And these tomatoes are like massive. And I'm
They
like,
are.
Yo.
They seriously are massive. Like I was shocked.
Yeah. And she's holding this tomato in her like girl hands. And I'm like, wait, why is that tomato so massive? And then I was super jealous. I was like, that's not fair. I want big tomatoes. And so all of my paste tomatoes always have blossom end rot. This year, I finally used Kelzyme on the tomatoes that specifically in that area too. And I like made a mental note that I was doing it. And let me just tell you, it was the first year I didn't have a single blossom end rot. I was so happy because in the years I've always had my tomatoes just terrible blossom end rot when it came to just the paste one. It was the paste that would always have it. All my other tomatoes were fine. Okay, good to know, John
That's
and Sarah.
awesome. And I also want to add for my tomatoes, like before we plant them, like I put old like bedding, old hay that's been composting for a little bit, and then rabbit manure, and then I'll put the compost over it. So it's like it's kind of that hugelkultur method that like like I've never had blossom end rot or anything like that. And I really do think it's because of the hugelkultur like method, how it like slowly breaks down. And then they really start getting a lot of the nutrient from the stuff that's breaking down towards the end of the season. And that, I promise you, that is when like the tomatoes start coming out all over the place.
Well, it's funny because we were talking about, tomatoes and not doing anything fancy. Well, you got these big old beautiful tomatoes in your garden. You didn't have to use Kelzyme. I had to use Kelzyme to get some decent tomatoes of mine. But fancy, if we're talking about like fancy and beautiful things, Casey does a lot of beautiful things and fancy stuff over there in his homestead. And I think we're going to pull up another comment call out because Casey makes bread on his homestead.
Time for
subscriber comment call out. Pew pew pew.
That was my try to segue from tomatoes to bread. It wasn't really smooth.
I have to say that was a wonderful segue.
It wasn't very smooth.
That was professional. See, if Alicia's listening on her day off, we are really good seguers.
I'm trying.
No, but the funny post for this was Monica actually during the week tagged me in it because we are known as the bread people here in the small town where we live. And this comment is from Geneva Chambers and it says, "Hey peeps, so anyone who has made bread from scratch, can you please help me? Every time I try to make sandwich bread, honestly, any bread to do with yeast, I can't ever seem to get it to proof right. It tastes good, but ends up dense. Am I supposed to stir the yeast once you put it into the water, milk, just drop it in and leave it? My house is a little on the colder side, so I keep the bowl either in the microwave or the oven. I make sure I don't add salt until later in the process so I don't kill the yeast, and I use sugar when I let the yeast proof. Any tips and tricks y'all have for me would be amazing. I use dry active yeast." Okay. Sorry, that was a mouthful. And I commented on this comment with these same tips. But what I do is when I get to the second proofing stage, I preheat my oven. And that heat seems to help the rising of the bread more. Proofing the yeast and stirring it, I have noticed to be more beneficial in helping the sandwich bread rise. And again, I say sandwich bread because you want it to be fluffy and airy, where some of the other breads you don't want to be as fluffy and the air holes, I guess you could call it, inside the bread. I stir and I use just faucet temperature hot water. Like turn the hot water on the highest because it won't get that hot if you have your water heater set to the right temp. Add your sugar and yeast and let it double in size, but then I stir it. I stir that yeast back into the water before I pour it into my bread. And I let it rise on the second time when we've preheated the oven. And then the third rise is always going to be in your pan that you're going to cook the bread in. If it's dense and it's not rising, you've either had milk or water that's too hot and has killed the yeast, or you're not letting it rise as much as it needs to. Especially if your house is colder, you may have to let it rise for another 30 minutes, 45 minutes more than what it says in a recipe. Like the recipe that I do, it's an Amish white bread. It's every 30 minutes, you're punching it down and letting it rise. If my house is colder, I may have to do every hour. But you want to see it double in size. So that's just kind of a to know for yeast, but also what bread flour you use. You make sure to use bread flour because all-purpose flour doesn't rise as well as bread flour does. So I that's just kind of my little soapbox moment. Carmen, do you make your own bread on the homestead?
Actually, I have made bread in the past, but I've been trying to do sourdough, and Lord have mercy, like y'all, like
It's a lot.
sourdough bread. Like we can make cinnamon rolls, we can make pancakes, waffles, biscuits. We can do all the sourdough except bread. Like it does not do it. Like I don't get what it is, and I'm the type of person, y'all. If I've tried over 4 times, I'm done. So what I do with my sourdough now has nothing to do with bread.
No, it's so true. Okay, let me just soapbox again on the sourdough starter. So a friend from the farmer's market gave me a 25-year-old starter, and well, some of it, and was like,
Mhm.
"Oh yeah, you should try. You make amazing, yeast bread. Try the sourdough." I said, "Okay." So I went on the handy dandy YouTube and was watching videos on making sourdough bread. First of all, let me tell you, it's like for one loaf, it takes like 30 days.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, 30 days, 16 hours a day. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm gonna stick to dry active yeast. This is great, but it is a true art form. If you can do sourdough bread, it is an art form, and I bow my head to you because
Same.
it is not easy at all.
Yeah, I've killed a lot of sourdough starters.
Me too.
See, that's what annoys me. We're not bad at sourdough. That's what really gets me, y'all. It's like our sourdough starter's great. I feed it, it does great. We can make all the things, except for bread. And it's just like I am tired of wasting so much good flour to feed this massive piece of dough that is going to just give me nonsense.
Right, right. And I think it's more it's better for my ego, I guess I'll call it, to just use the yeast because then I think I'm like bomb bread maker to where when I try to do the sourdough, I'm like, oh wow, I am so talk about newbie. Here we go, the newbie word again. Such a newbie. But no,
I guess
yes.
I can't help but think that knowing how to make bread successfully out of sourdough is one of those like ultimate homesteading skills because if you're ever in a bind where we don't have the ability to go buy yeast, then you can still make bread for your family and for
I'll be
yourself.
making flatbread.
I
Yeah,
was about to
exactly.
say
I
That's
it's
will
what
gonna
I
be
be
was
some
like.
making
unleavened bread.
flatbread,
Ev-
pancakes,
Everybody
waffles.
eating sourdough pancakes over at Carmen's house.
Yeah, if we had to survive life or death, don't worry, guys. I got the sourdough. We'll all have waffles.
There you go. Hey, you know what though? People eat. That's at the fancy. That's like bougie though. You could be like,
I was about to say that is so
kids.
bougie. Yeah.
We're having waffle rolls for our hamburgers. Okay,
Yeah,
you bring the waffle sourdough. I'll bring the beef. We'll have a cookout. It'll be
let's do it.
perfect. Even in the end of days when there's no yeast in the stores, we can do it.
Well, and that's the cool thing about sourdough. It's like, let's say some crazy situation happened. There's everybody's hoarding yeast. Like,
That could
Sorry,
happen. You don't know.
just
sourdough
FYI,
can
that's
turn
me.
into like 20 sourdoughs in a matter of 3 days. Like you can
Yeah.
Right.
literally just take bits and pieces of it, put it in a bunch of jars, create whole new starters, and then 20 families have sourdough from your one jar of sourdough.
Yeah, and I think that was what I was, that was kind of the point. It's like one of those things that if you know how to successfully make, I feel like it's like one of those, like I said, ultimate. It's like the ultimate hack for like living off grid or living in survival mode is how do you make your own sourdough bread? Because if you could do that, then I feel like you can conquer the world at this point because
I
it,
ain't conquering it, Monica.
it's
I
hard.
ain't conquering
It's
it.
hard. Don't
Oh,
stop. Don't
can
stop
I
doing
just
the
share
hard
this
things.
comment though?
Oh,
Proud
see, there you go,
yeast.
Janice.
No, I
That
am the
is too
same way,
funny.
Janice. I am a hoarder. One, I sell my bread, so I have to be a hoarder. And we have to be able to have yeast. And I will tell you, it's getting a little bit harder to find yeast online. Hey, this isn't scare mode. This isn't, what do they call us, Monica? Fear mongers.
Fear mongering.
This is just true. I buy my yeast on the good old Amazon.com. And it has been harder to find the Amazon stores that are in stock with it. So yes, I am a proud yeast hoarder.
You and Janice are both hoarding all the yeast. So there's 2 states down now. We need to be.
It's okay. You and Carmen, I'll just mail you some. Can you even mail yeast?
She
Let me
said
just
she
not
had
say that.
6 pounds. 6 pounds of yeast. I can't even imagine that.
Oh, see, we're closer. I think
Here we go.
20,
See, look.
maybe 20,
What?
30. But see, I probably can go through a pound of yeast in 2 weeks.
Here's the thing.
Wow.
Admitting
With the
you have a
amount of bread
problem
we
is the
do.
first step. Really.
Yes. Hello, my name's Casey. I'm a yeast hoarder.
Janice is over there holding her hand up. Hi, my name's Janice. I'm a yeast hoarder. She's already admitted it in the quiet of her house.
You all need shirts. I hoard yeast.
Yes. And I want to also, for our other yeast hoarders, the best way to store it is in your freezer. Now, I don't keep all 5 billion pounds in my freezer. I do probably 2 pounds at a time, but I actually take the yeast straight from the freezer to add it to the bread because it keeps it
No.
alive longer. Yeah, crazy trick.
I heard that you had to take the yeast and cool it down to room temperature before you could use it.
Nope.
You
What?
heard wrong.
You
That's a
heard.
lie.
Well, I don't know, but see, when I put the frozen yeast into my tap hot water with sugar, it works like beautifully.
Now
Well,
I
you
want to
also-
make bread.
Yeah, me too. But you also use bougie yeast. I mean, you use bougie bread flour. I ain't got no time for bread
I was
flour
about
over
to-
here.
See, bread flour, I don't even know if I'd call it bougie because it's like really cheap. It's from the good old Sam's Club. And yeah, I don't do like I know this is terrible because I'm saying all my tricks out loud. So people that come to the farmer's market be like, Casey uses the cheap stuff.
First of all, if anyone is buying bread from a farmer's market, I promise you could give them all the tips and they will not make the bread.
Oh, they won't. No, I've had many people say that they don't want to learn when they could just come up and buy the loaf.
Exactly.
We do an Italian urban cheese bread, and I shouldn't call it that because Subway will get on me. But it is. And it is so good to where I was like, gosh, if I didn't have to make it because it's a process, I would totally go and spend the $5 a loaf to buy this cheddar bread. It's so good.
Ooh, Casey, do you have like a basic, easier beginner bread recipe that you could share with the group? I would love to see it.
I do. I do. So while y'all are talking, I'm going to try to find it. I actually learned this recipe from Andrea over at, oh my gosh, I just forgot, VW Family Farm. And it is a simple Amish bread recipe. Like, it is fail proof. Like, when I tell you fail proof, it is fail proof. You will get the most beautiful, fluffy bread every single time. So y'all chat among yourselves, and I'm going to find that and drop it in the chat.
Well, now I want bread. I don't even eat bread. Bread makes my tummy hurt, but now I want bread all of a sudden. Because when we make bread over here, Carmen, you haven't made bread in a while, have you? I mean, I know you've made bread. You said you have made bread, but it's been a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a little bit. It's summer. I'm not trying to use my oven.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's me too. I'm more of I usually just get like a bug and I'm like, I'm gonna make bread. I'm gonna make bread. Because like for real though, when I make bread, kids will eat an entire, like children that normally are like, I don't know what there is to eat, or they only want to eat other things. They don't want to eat bread. All of a sudden turn into, they need toast. They don't need just one slice though. They need like 5 slices of toast. I really want to eat a sandwich now, but I also want to eat cinnamon toast. We love cinnamon toast because it's like easy and cheap, and it's probably like not the greatest for you, but it is what it is. But they take cinnamon sugar and they sprinkle it on a buttered bread. Yeah. My kids, as soon as I pull a fresh loaf of bread out, these people will go grab the coconut oil. They'll spread coconut oil on their bread, add cinnamon sugar, and that's it. And then I have an entire loaf of bread has disappeared. So I have to make like 4 loaves anytime I make a loaf of bread if I actually want to have anything beyond the first 20 minutes of it coming out of the oven. It's ridiculous.
That's wild.
Well, you do have a football team of boys.
Well, and I think that's the one too. The boys are the worst about it. They're like, bread, it's coming out of the oven. I'm like, it's not candy, guys. It's not even cake. It's just hot bread, and they immediately see it, and it's like, yeah, it's like the hot roll.
Okay, hot bread is the most delicious thing ever. I mean, when people go to like Olive Garden, why do you go to Olive Garden? Normally, you want breadsticks and salad. Like, I mean, the other stuff is good,
Right.
but you're there for breadsticks.
The unlimited breadsticks and salad bowl. Yeah, the bread. The bread is, yeah, when it's hot like that, the kids are crazy about it. So yeah, that's why I don't make bread as often, because I feel like it's worth not any of my time, because I make 4 loaves of bread and I pull out 1 loaf of bread. That's it. That's what I get in the end, because they eat all of the other ones right away. Casey, did you find your?
I did, and I dropped it. I dropped the link. It is, I'm telling you, it is such a foolproof recipe. When I first, because this video is older.
Okay, I'm going to paste that over in Facebook.
Because let me tell you, this recipe, which is just the basic Amish white, and I say Amish white because people will pay more money for it for some reason at the market, because they're like, oh, it's Amish white, which really
I
is
would
just a sandwich white.
100% be the one that's like, oh, it's Amish.
Me too.
Take my money.
And I actually add stuff to it to make different, like I'll add cinnamon and raisin and turn it into a cinnamon raisin bread, which we do sell. I add the Italian herbs, garlic powder, onion powder, and cheese, and that's the Italian. So this base is the base that I use on all of my bread, including, we do one, it's called Christmas morning French toast, which is just cinnamon sugar Amish white bread that's cut thick, but it's such a simple base. If you know this base, it can do the base. You can literally add anything to it. I have actually subbed some of the flour, because I think it's about 5 cups of flour that you use for 2 loaves. I've done half and half whole wheat flour and the bread flour to do like a whole wheat one, and add some flaxseed, and Mom likes the flaxseed and fiber bread, so we do it that way. So it is a very simple recipe.
Do you make focaccia? That's like my favorite bread in the world. Focaccia bread.
So I thought about doing it this year,
Is that how
because we
you
had
say
so
it?
many focaccia. Yeah, like with the tomatoes and what is it? Tomato, basil, and
Ooh.
it's
All
so
the
good.
things. You could put whatever you want. You could just like put it in the oil, and then see, I'm like a super savory person. I love like garlic,
Yes.
Parmesan cheese, and salt and pepper, and oh my gosh, I want bread right now.
I know, and now I got to go cook bread, so I'm gonna be like hungry the whole time as I'm cooking.
You're gonna be eating bread the whole morning. See, I'm not. I gotta get out of here. I can't even deal with this. I'm gonna be wanting bread all day.
Oh yeah, okay. So I don't even know if I can put it up there because it's from Facebook. But Karen West, I'll give her a shout out. She is our fabulous market runner. She runs our market in the small town where we live, and yeah, she is. I pay her off with bread. So I'm like, hey, I want this spot. Oh, here's 3 loaves of bread. So that's how I bribe people, is with bread at market.
I have a friend who
That's
needs
funny.
someone to watch her homestead, and literally she's having someone just stay in her homestead, and then they get to whatever they harvest, the milk and whatever. She's leaving them a bunch of homemade bread, and that is like their payment for helping her. And I would totally jump on that all day.
I
If
was
could get
about to say
fresh
that is like
bread
the
and
best
stuff.
deal ever.
Right.
Yeah, that is pretty good, actually. That's a sweet deal if you can harvest all the things while you're staying there for a little bit of time. Yeah.
Right. Especially if it's during like the heavy garden season. Because,
Yeah.
about the focaccia bread, I tried to do it this year, but I don't know if y'all have the same problems. My tomatoes went from doing amazing to producing all at once to dead within like a matter of 4 weeks.
Tomatoes are bound to do that. Like they will do this outburst of production of like a ton of tomatoes. That's why when that happens, I like throw them all in the freezer. I'm just like, look, I can't handle all
That is
this.
the same thing that I did. 9 bags deep now.
Good. That's good.
Yeah. See, I used all mine at the time. I basically used everything I had. I canned up everything as I could. Anything that stayed extra, I put as sauce, or I did salsa and all that. And I put everything, canned everything. And then I gave the rest to the animals. And I have like a ton of plants out there just waiting to start blooming again. Just waiting to start blooming. So
They're like, we're almost ready, Monica. Give us a couple more minutes. We're almost
yeah,
ready.
well, I'm
That was
getting
my
little,
tomato voice.
Yeah, that was a good tomato voice. I'm getting
Thanks.
little like flowers on stuff finally out there again. All my peppers are flowering again now, and I'm like, yes, that's going to happen soon.
No, peppers are the same way with me. Like peppers, they just won't ever die on me. Like I can forget to water maybe for a couple days and they're still like, it's all right, Casey, we'll still produce like 9 billion pounds of bell peppers for you.
Well, I have barely got any peppers this year, so I'm very excited. It's going to be a pepper explosion, and I literally cannot wait. So remind me in about a month that I just said that, because in a month I'm going to be like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I have all these peppers. But I can't wait to restock my peppers in my pantry because I'm running low on those things. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, I think we went off on our like food tangent, which is why we're all so super hungry.
Yeah.
And this is a terrible segue to put into it, but you know, you could also have beef as food. And I think we have another comment call out about cows. So
It's time for
subscriber comment call out. Pew pew pew. I will say that Alicia would have cringed at that transition that I did.
Yeah,
So
it was
I'm not
okay.
allowed to do it anymore.
Okay, so this lady, Heather Rios, she's sweet. I can tell already because she's trying to say she just wants to help her husband. She says, we have a few acres and we want to put 2 to 3 cows on. We would need about 200 feet of fence straight across. Just FYI, this means nothing to me. 200 feet. I have no idea what that even looks like. So this means nothing, but the rest of it I can relate to. I know we would just need a strand or 2 of electric. I would need something solar. I'm having a hard time understanding all the things. Looking at the website, it's overwhelming. Someone please tell me exactly what I would need, basic, cheapest, or whatever, or even a YouTube video. Please be kind. I'm just trying to take some things off my plate, my husband's plate. And I appreciate that part of it because I'm the same way. So we have cattle here, and it's one of those things that, you know, we have trained our cattle on electric fencing. You don't need electric fencing for cattle if you have good cattle panel fencing. Now, if you're going to go with barbed wire, I would say 100% do like 5-strand barbed wire. You want them to be as close as possible. Cows don't care about barbed wire. They will put their heads through. They may get a little nicked up, but their skin is tough. I mean, hello, anybody wear leather belts or shoes or leather anything? That's their skin. So it's pretty tough and it's going to get cut and they could care less. They're not like horses or pigs. They have very tough leather. That's exactly what it is, skin. So barbed wire needs to be 5 strands minimum if you're going to be doing, in my opinion, cattle, even if it's just a couple cows. It says down in the comments somewhere, I think that she's on a highway. And if that's the case, I have cows on a highway, a major state highway here in Texas on Highway 34. It's 75 miles per hour at the place where my cattle are. I have 3 of them. Now they are on 5-strand barbed wire. And I will tell you right now that they put, even when somebody else said 6 strands of barbed wire, I have T-braces on the ends as well. I have the big posts. I have them very secured. Now, I will say that just because they are on 5 or 6 strands of barbed wire doesn't mean they won't try to constantly put their head through. They will. Having them put the hot wire on there somewhere is going to help. I use poly wire because it's cheap and it still works the same as the full electric wire that the buy. So that's what's worked for me. I love the poly wire. It's definitely a lot more inexpensive and we can move it a lot easier. We train our cattle when they're very young to be around poly wire, and we actually completely section our animals off. I have a couple videos of that, and I even have a little short that I put up, I think just earlier this year or at the end of last year, where our fencing was damaged. The cow, my bull decided he wanted to get out of the fencing area, and I just threw some poly wire up to keep him in, and he respects the poly wire. He won't go near it. So it depends on really what you're looking at, but I think honestly, in my opinion, it's going to be the poly wire, the cheaper wire. You can take those little T-posts and move them little plastic T-posts around. It works great. I would highly suggest cattle panel. If you're going to invest in cattle, they're truly an investment. You want to get what works for them best. And I know Carmen has animals over on her homestead too, and she doesn't have big animals, but for instance, you have rabbits, Carmen, and just because you have rabbits doesn't mean you can just throw them into a metal cage and hope for the best, or say,
That's exactly right.
oh, we're going to do a rabbit colony and hope for the best. No, you have to know the animal, know what their capabilities are, and know that they can get out or that they can dig out or whatever. And
You
so,
do not want to learn the hard way.
and
That
see,
is
that's,
a lot of money and
yeah,
it's a lot of stress. And then even you may even be running around your pasture chasing animals. Like it's just you don't want to learn the hard way. Do your research now, just like how she's doing it. I think she did a great job going
Yes,
ahead, putting the
absolutely.
information on there, trying to get people to help her out and advice, because that is exactly what I would have done. Because like I said, you really, really cannot risk losing your money because your animals are out roaming all over the place, and then you have to deal with people's attitudes. It's just too much.
well, and that's the thing too. Like if you look, unfortunately, if you look at a lot of our videos, you're always seeing us saying, okay, there's another cow out. Now that's because we do have our cattle on several other properties, not just our property. Our cows, we try to maintain our fence line pretty steady. The fencing that our cows have hopped over or walked through, that's actually not our fencing. It's fencing that's connected to another property. And technically, that fence is the neighbor's fence. So you can only do so much when it's not
Right.
your fence. So whether your cows destroy it or another cow destroys it or whatever, you have to, there's always that, beautiful symphony of working with them and working in harmony and, knowing that you're, being kind to one another. But most of the fencing that we have to constantly go back and redo. They'll snap 5-strand barbed wire. I mean, they'll snap a barbed wire fence very quickly. I had that happen on my birthday this last month. One of my girls wanted grass. It was outside of her fence and she just walked right through the barbed wire, just snapped it.
That blows my mind because it's like people who are ignorant to just cows in general. It's like when I'm driving and I see cows in a pasture, you just see this big animal just standing there eating grass, doing nothing. You don't think about them jumping fences and all that stuff. Like it blows my mind. Like I have to watch videos of this just to see that it's possible.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, look, I just did a video like last week or whatever of our big bull. One of the girls from next door, one of the Longhorn calves, she's about a year old. She came over to our side, and I was like, "Oh, look, we have a Longhorn in our yard." And I went down and found the fence was tore up, kind of at the meeting spot. And I said, "Okay, this fence has been messed up before. It's an older fence. It's fine." And so I went down there, and I was actually I was looking at Solomon, our bull, and I'm like, "You stay over there, buddy." And as soon as I said that, here he comes. He walks through. I just watched him. I videoed it actually for Eric mainly, but I ended up throwing it up on YouTube as well. But I just watched him walk across, like through the fence, just lifted his foot, walked right through it. And I was like, okay. I mean, that is not cattle panel.
He showed you.
He did. He walked right through and he was walking up towards me. The rest of the video has been cut off because he was walking up towards me. I'm like, no, I don't have any treats for you. Why are you coming over here? But he was just like, you're right, I'm coming back. I'm going to come back to my side now because he had escaped over to the other side like 2 months earlier. And I'm like, come on, guys, really? That's what I told the neighbor. I called her and I was like, we just need a gate back here. We just need a gate. We can just leave open and close every now and then when they want to, get all wily and come back and forth. But yeah, it's really about knowing the animal, knowing the area that you're in. And I think she had a lot of great feedback. I think she had a lot of great questions and that she asked. And like you said, Carmen, she did a great job with that question. And I'm really thankful that she, brought that up. And it probably got a lot of people to think about what fencing looks like and what their animals look like too. So
Right,
yeah, good job,
right.
Heather. Yeah.
And that's a kind of a good segue into making sure that you join our wonderful Facebook group, which is the Beginner's Homesteading Guide, that you join or that you subscribe to different channels on YouTube, because a lot of stuff that I've learned on the homestead, I've learned through, besides my friends, YouTubers and watching videos. And this is a great time and a great group that you can join and get your questions asked. And you may see it on the next week's show. So
Yeah,
y'all,
for sure.
that wraps up this episode of Hey Y'all Hey Morning Show. We want to thank Carmen again so much for joining us
Thank
on the
you.
show. And make sure to go over to our Linktree link and listen to the mini homestead episode for season 4. We had so much fun recording it. But y'all, we will see y'all on next week's episode with Alicia. Next week's episode, y'all, I'm going to call it out. Both Eric and Papa Jim, we had the husbands on our podcast. You're not going to want to miss this episode.
Definitely not. Also, don't forget, we have a special announcement coming out really soon. I feel like it's coming up really soon, Casey.
Yes, it's September 25th. It's a huge, huge announcement. We're so super excited about it.
Mhm.
It will be that you'll see a notification on all of our pages, all of our YouTubes. So make sure that you press that bell so that you're notified when it goes live, because
Yep.
you're not going to want to miss this exciting news.
Yep. And 2 Mondays is when we announce it. So we're really
Yep.
excited. So don't forget to come back here next Tuesday, and don't forget to check out all our podcasts on Monday morning. So thank you so much again, Carmen. We appreciate you.
Oh, I had a blast. I love being on.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we're
Thank
going to
you.
send it to our Alexa commercial ad, and we will see you next week, y'all. Y'all have a
Bye.
great week.
Bye, y'all. Bye.
Hey, Monica, did you know it's now even easier to listen to Round the Hay Bale podcast?
What? Really? How easy?
That's right. All you have to do is say, Alexa, play Round the Hay Bale podcast.
Playing Round the Hay Bale podcast on Apple Music.
Ooh, we fancy.
Tune in to Round the Hay Bale every Monday at 9 a.m. Central.